Crowds of Muslims gathered in Jerusalem's Al-Aqsa compound for evening prayers as the faithful prepare for the start of Ramadan. The compound, known to Jews as Temple Mount, is the focal point for many Muslims, especially during the holy month.
Hundreds of Muslims also gathered in the West Bank city of Ramallah on Wednesday night to attend the lighting of a giant lantern as a part of cultural events that mark this month.
The crowd erupted in cheers when the lantern was illuminated.
Crowds of Muslims gathered in Jerusalem's Al-Aqsa compound for evening prayers as the faithful prepare for the start of the month of Ramadan. The compound, known as Temple Mount to the Jews, is the focal point for many Muslims, especially during Ramadan. Ramadan is a month of dawn to dusk fasting, prayer, and religious devotion for hundreds of millions of Muslims around the world. Hundreds of Muslims also gathered in the West Bank city of Ramallah on Wednesday night to attend the lighting of a giant lantern as part of cultural events that mark the month of Ramadan. The crowd erupted in cheers when the lantern was illuminated. However, in the context of conflict between Israel and Palestine, Ramadan has often been a period of increased friction and confrontation. This year's Ramadan comes against the backdrop of the worst Israeli-Palestinian fighting in recent years, and many have become more violent during the holy month. Israeli forces have carried out almost nightly arrest raids across the occupied West Bank over the past year. The incursions began after a string of deadly attacks took place in Israel last spring, thus provoking a fierce response from Palestinians. So far, 85 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli fire this year, and Palestinian attackers have killed 15 Israelis, according to a tally by the Associated Press. Israel says most of the Palestinians killed have been militants. However, a number of youth protesters and civilians not involved in the confrontations have also been killed. All but one of the Israelis killed were civilians.
For the Muslims, the most celebrated event, I think one of the most celebrated events is definitely the Ramadan. Eid al-Fitr is the end of Ramadan. It's a celebration, but something that, the Muslims are really putting efforts for the worship to God and, to put all the efforts is actually during the month of Ramadan. And in the area of Palestine, Jerusalem, and also the West Bank, this past 2 years, as we've seen, it was, full of tensions because the fall of Ramadan is coinciding with the fall of Passover, which is the Jewish celebrated big days. And as we know, during the month of Ramadan, we Muslims in the area of Palestine and Jerusalem and surrounding, they go to Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is in the same compound as the Temple Mount, which the Jews go there for the Passover and, the series of ceremonies that take place during that time, around the Passover. So we're hoping that this is not going to happen again this time. But as we've seen in the news, the Israeli government has already announced that it will place a number of restrictions on Palestinians who wish to enter Al-Aqsa Mosque during the holy month of Ramadan this year. Women of all ages, boys up to age of 12 and men over 55 years are allowed to enter the Al-Aqsa Mosque during Ramadan without having to have a permit. This is by the Major General Ghassan Al-Yan, coordinator of Israeli government activities in the territories. In a statement, he said, and meanwhile, men aged 45 to 55 must first obtain permission from the Israeli authorities to enter Al-Aqsa. And we saw a couple of months ago, one of the top leaders of the Israel government, he actually visited Al-Aqsa Mosque, and it drew a lot of, how do you say it, contras, because it looks like a provocation to the Muslims, where, well, he's not allowed to go inside there and do the sermons or do, what do you call it?
The practices.
The practices, exactly. But he went there and then he mentioned that, why are we banned from going inside here?
Indeed, yeah.
And yeah, that's just hopefully not going to happen again.
I think those kind of issues will never unravel, especially between the Palestinian and also the Jerusalem community itself. You were also mentioning earlier what happened in 2022 and 2021, again, because it simultaneously happened during the holy month of Ramadan and also the celebration of Passover. If we remember in 2022, there was actually a bomb that happened during during a worship by, the Muslim community that was having, their salah there in the mosque itself, and then there was a bomb, and there's a lot of threats, and even there's a lot of Israelis, their groups actually coming into the mosque and trying to just, gather all these Palestinian people out of the mosque itself. Now, just from January until today, so there's about 88 Palestinians and also 16 Israelis actually that had been killed. 15 were civilians. This is always escalating and the tension is coming up, but hopefully in the month of Ramadan, whether you're a Muslim, whether you're a Jew, this is a month of blessings and whatnot, and people can really, take this time to kind of reflect to themselves, and hopefully would have this kind of good bindings within these two communities and two faiths also.
It's a month of contemplation.
Indeed.